being with her newborn. It's now, what, 2 months? 2 months old, I think, as far as I can remember. And it's lovely to see everyone. We're just letting people come in as you arrive. Feel free to share your video so we can see your lovely faces. And I put a couple of reflection questions in the chat. Feel free to answer them in the chat, which is basically, what are you grateful for as we start this call? Staying centered in uncertain times, connecting into gratitude is a way to bring some centeredness. And also another way is to just breathe, to remember the power of breath and intentional breathing. We breathe all the time, but intentional breathing, a couple of longer breaths in, a couple of longer breaths out, and feel what that feels like in your body. But what are you grateful for? And or as you take a couple of conscious breaths, what does that feel like in your body? And we'll let people just check in slowly, gently in the chat. Marcia is on a beautiful lake somewhere, so just by sharing that chat, Marcia, we're joining you wherever that lake is. What else? I see reconnecting with this group. I agree, Marcia or Marcia. Yes. And just being alive. Absolutely. There's something about reminding ourselves of what we're grateful for, which puts things in perspective. Even when times are uncertain, complex, challenging in extreme ways, we can stop for a second and notice there are some things that are going well. The fact that we woke up this morning and we're here is going well for all of us. There are plenty of people who haven't woken up this morning. Just noticing that can bring a little frisson of connectedness with life. Just the little things and the big things that we sometimes take for granted. The community, I see the love of the husband, the toolkit for grounding, and greetings from New York. Yes, Elsie, greetings from New York. And maybe just in the chat, where are you calling in from? I see New York City. I'm in Tucson, Arizona, the land of the Tohono O'odham and Pasquayaqui tribes, unceded land. Where else? I see Monterey, California, Ensenada, Mexico, the south of France, Tampa Bay, Florida. So we're reaching in our imagination and in our sensing across the continents to connect in with this community, to this gathering. So welcome all. I wanted to introduce today a couple of frameworks, two, that's all. Rather than my just sharing slides and then we go into breakouts, I thought we would do something that all of us know how to do, which is just to draw. You don't have to be an artist to draw. You just need a piece of paper and a pen or pencil or crayon or whatever you have that's capable of drawing a line on your piece of paper. And I would like you to connect back to first grade and second grade you, where you had no preconceptions about what an artist was and what drawing was. You just drew in whatever way you wished. And our first drawing that I'm going to encourage you to make is just a triangle. Very simple, three-sided figure, a triangle. So just draw a triangle. It doesn't have to be a specific type of triangle. It doesn't have to be on an edge. It can't, don't worry about 90 degree, 45, 30 degree, just a triangle, a free form triangle. Here we go, triangle. And I'm going to use the metaphor of a triangle to allow us to consider that there are three primary ways that we as humans interface with the world around us, and therefore interface with uncertainty or complexity or challenge. So there is our body, the senses, the body. So one part of the triangle, you can write body. It's all the somatic intelligence. It's all the practices that we've been practicing with women together of breathing, of feeling into the body, of sitting a little taller and feeling the front and the back and the top of the head and the bottom of the feet. So we interface with the world through our body. And there are many, many practices that we can employ to find centeredness by simply bringing ourselves back to noticing the body. What does the body want, feel, need? And the breath being one of the primary ways for us to consciously alter our body's readiness for change and bring some groundedness, some centeredness. The other aspect is feelings, emotions. So another side of the triangle is feelings or emotions. So when we do check-ins in this community, or when we do a check-in around what we're grateful for, and you feel that gratefulness in you, that's an emotion. We're tapping in consciously to bringing forth a more positive emotion. That's another way that we can center. Where complexity is hitting us, a challenge has come our way, an unexpected event that we weren't counting on today. And we can pause and say, but what am I grateful for? And feel that, not just think of it, but feel it. And the emotion, like the hit of oxytocin, the hormones that sort of course through our body in gratitude. That's another way we interface with the world. And then a third way is thinking, our busy mind. And so much of our modern life, ever since Descartes and probably before, is about emphasizing the usefulness of the brain, the mind, the thinking. And we don't want to discount that, but it's one of three. It's one other way. So our thoughts, how we think about the situation. Complexity hits us, uncertainty, obstacles, and we can either think, oh my goodness, I feel like a victim again, or we can think, that is very challenging. I could let myself feel like a victim again. Or I could think that this might be an opening to something new. Doesn't mean it's not uncomfortable, but I could think maybe, who knows? As challenging as this moment is, maybe it's a doorway, right? You can ask yourself, your brain can ask itself that question, and something shifts within us. We can think systemically, and we can choose positive thoughts, negative thoughts. Negative thoughts may appear. We can notice them and hold them lightly and let them go and bring in a countering positive thought. Doesn't mean it will resolve things, but it will shift your inner state of groundedness. Right? So we have these three primary ways that we can find groundedness, centeredness in the most uncertain of times. Through our mind, how we think and being conscious of what we're thinking. Through our emotions, choosing to feel and connect into some positive emotions, looking at this community and saying, wow, what a beautiful group of women of all ages and backgrounds. There's this community out there. I'm going to think of them when I'm feeling lonely and there's a hardship. I'm going to remember that there are some buddies out there that I could reach out to. Or the body. I can breathe and reassure myself that actually I'm not under a threat. Right? There's no tiger in the room. I can be relatively safe. I can remember to breathe, or I can look around the room with my body, and the eyes tell us we're relatively safe. It may feel like a challenge, something that's happened at work, something that's happened at home, but in this moment, on this screen, we're safe. This is a safe container. So those are your three primary interfaces with the world. And I want to invite you to consider that each of us will have a favorite. Some of us are mentally centered. We interface with the world through our thinking and our thoughts. I have that propensity. models, frameworks, literary thinking. Like that is a place of mind that I go for comfort and centeredness. Other of us center through emotion. That's our primary, the heart wide open, the connections, the relationships, the feelings. That's where we find our most grounded self. Others through the body. We have to feel ourselves in the room, feel the space. We interface through first body intelligence, and then the others come into place. So these are the sensory interfaces. Yes, there's a question from Deborah. Where does that, so Deborah, if you can unmute, I don't know if we can unmute at this phase of our recording, but we can hold that question. So I would invite you to consider that the senses, seeing, smelling, hearing, are all body-centered ways of inputting. But when we have our Q&A later, let's revisit that question because that's a great question. Absolutely. So let me share my screen for a moment and give you the opportunity to see my little PowerPoint moment this morning. I thought I have to find a triangle, and I found this triangle: body, feelings, thinking. And so for me, body is sort of the ground, thinking ended up on the left, and feelings on the right. I would just invite you, just for playfulness when we're in our breakouts, to see, did you arrange them the same way, or did you have a different intuition when you did your triangle? It may give you some insights. It may give you some food for thought. Where did you place these three interfaces on the triangle of interfacing with our world and finding groundedness? And as you can see, I have a silhouette of trees. And that's because I am going to ask you to now draw a tree. So first grade, a second grade tree. This is not a botanical representation for the tree almanac. So lollipop trees are great, tree with branches. You can put flowers on them, you can put fruits, whatever your tree feels like. Palm trees, conifers. A tree with a trunk of some sort going into some ground of some sort. So has everyone been able to draw a tree? Because we're going to use the metaphor of a tree to invite you into thinking systemically. So activating the power of thinking for groundedness in this particular session. And this is just one of three possibilities that I could have used, but I'm going to use the thinking today for our staying centered. Everybody has a tree. Let's see a show of hands. Who drew some roots? Okay, some of you drew some roots. For those of you who forgot the roots, I would invite you to draw some roots below the soil line. So draw those roots however you wish, squiggly lines, multiple lines, because we're drawing the ecosystem of a tree. And for most of us, the tree is the visible part above the soil. But actually, the fullness of the tree is very much the roots and the trunk and the system of branches and the canopy. Without roots, you would actually have no tree. It's the invisible part that is actually the centering and grounding and nutrient zone, although photosynthesis and leaves are obviously part of it. But there's a groundedness in terms of physicality that with weak roots, the tree is at risk. The winds come in and the trees topple. The roots are essential. All parts are essential, but the roots are essential for physical groundedness. And once you have your tree with your roots, I'm going to ask you to write at the very top of your tree, events or outcomes. Just the words events or outcomes at the very top of your tree. Because we're going to use the tree as a metaphor for systems thinking. And in systems thinking, we are invited to consider that we often only pay attention to the events or outcomes, especially in times of uncertainty. A job gets restructured, or a child leaves our home, and we're an empty nester, quote unquote, or something happens physically, an illness or a disability for a period of time. It's the event or outcome that we notice first and foremost, the top of the tree in this sense, in this metaphor. And at the level of your trunk, I'd like you to write structures or processes. So with systems thinking, the invitation is you have an event that hits you, an uncertainty, a complexity, a challenge. You can either stay at that level, at the very top level of the tree, or you can ask yourself, what structures or processes led to that event or that outcome? Which one do I have influence over, and which ones do others have influence over? What are the structures or processes that give rise to the event? So I'll give you an example. I was supposed to go to a class yesterday at 9 o'clock. A small family emergency happened at 8 a.m. That was the event. I rushed over and took care of it. I asked myself, what was the structure or process that gave rise to my having to go and help out my mom because of this accident emergency? So the structure and process is, I have a car, I can get over there, I'm 5 minutes away. She lives on her own. She chooses to be more independent, perhaps, than she needs to be at 90, but that gives her a sense of vitality and vibrancy. I haven't taken away all the rugs in the house because all the rugs in the house are memories of all the years that she and my dad traveled. Right? These were all the structures and processes that gave rise to this moment where she had a wobble. And I had to go over and help out. Understanding the structures and processes was really important for the next steps that I needed to take over the course of the day and today. So it helped me stop and say, okay, I'm not just going to address the event by just going over and helping her. I'm going to start thinking about the structures and processes that I now, together with her, need to put in place so we minimize this happening again. If I left it at that, I'd have a fix, right? But I'm going to ask you to go below the soil line. And this is the territory of beliefs, assumptions, and expectations. So I'd like you to write beliefs, assumptions, and expectations. And then at the very bottom of your root system, at the lowest level of the root system, sort of the tap root of your tree, I'd like you to write identity/purpose. So these are invisible parts of the system of a tree and of a system of our lives, of a systems of an organization. And yet they are part of the whole and they help us get centered. So if I were to just remove the rugs with my mother's agreement, she might be safer walking because she's a little unstable on her feet. But then I have to look at the beliefs, assumptions, expectations, mindsets that cause the rugs to be there or not be there. So my belief and assumption is it'll be safer. My mom's belief and assumption is the home won't feel like my home. Inherently, for us to resolve this together, to navigate this uncertainty, this challenge, we need to talk and connect ourselves and others at the level of beliefs and assumptions. To start to notice what are the beliefs and assumptions that gave rise to the structures that led to the event. Right? You can see. And then at the very bottom, identity. I could just come barreling in as a well-meaning daughter, remove rugs, not listen to her beliefs, assumptions, mindsets, and I would be directly impacting my mom's identity. as a 90-year-old, cognizant, free-willed, adult human being who can make her own choices. I would be taking away that freedom if I did it summarily. So to sit down and actually have that conversation. What at the level of identity is giving rise to the mindset that says rugs are an essential part of my home, or else it doesn't feel like home, that then gives level to a structure that is, it's a little dangerous to be walking around a little unstable on slippery rugs that then may cause every once in a while a wobble and a fall. Make sense for everyone? Okay. What I'd like you to do is, now that you have the structure in place for yourself, is to take this framework and map out somewhere on your drawing, what's the event or outcome that is challenging you, that's making you feel uncertain? Or there may be multiple, but like, what's something real that's happening in your life right now that causes you to feel a little off kilter, off center? So just write that down at that level, event or outcome or behavior, whatever comes to mind. This is a little draft, so there's no right answer or wrong answer. And then you want to ask yourself, what are the structures or processes that I have control over, that you have control over, that contribute to that outcome, that have sort of been part of creating that outcome or event, even if tangentially? What are the things that I have control over? Because when we want to stay centered in uncertain times, the first place to go is for ourselves. And there may be other structures and processes that other people need to shift, but let's just operate over those that we might need to shift. Once you have a structure or a process that sort of comes to mind, and ask yourself, what's the mindset or the belief that I hold that causes me to have this structure or process in place that has sort of contributed at some level to this event or outcome? What's like a core belief? Like from the example of my mom, which I'm sharing with her permission, independence is a core mindset. She's always been an independent woman, so why would she shift that? Right? That's an important part. And then at the level of identity, so notice, what might it be in your own sense of purpose or your own sense of identity that gives rise to this belief or this mindset? At the heart of it, how would you not be you, or you think you might not be you, if you let go of this belief or mindset or modified it? Because that's where the groundedness may need to be sought, modified, expanded, shifted. Right? We might need to shift our identity. So an example of those who may become empty nesters, we have an identity of being parents, and then the children had left, and now we're quote unquote empty nesters. That's an identity shift at the very core. And so there might be some beliefs that need a little bit of rethinking, and maybe even some structures, and therefore new events. So play with this, and the invitation is really to just think, how might this way of thinking help with grounding when an event hits you, when the top of the tree blows in the wind? How might looking at structures and processes, beliefs and assumptions, and ultimately identity help you find your center again, or help you find a new center that allows you to weather the passing winds of change? With that, the invitation is to go into some breakouts and just play with these concepts and ideas and see what emerged as our first pass. This is a first pass introduction to how to use systems thinking and the metaphor of a tree to remind ourselves that at the root, we can find groundedness and centeredness in any windstorm. We'll see you back in how many minutes? 15, 20, let's say 20 minutes. Groups of 3 or 4. And then we'll open it up for questions and insights. And at some point, a breakout button will show up. There we go.